Hello friends, welcome back to Tutorials in English Literature. In today's lesson, I shall talk over the origin of Romanticism in England. It's really a broad topic. So, in today's lesson, I shall focus only on the social causes or social factors that ushered in the Romantic movement in England. Romanticism is one of the most important historical events of all time. Unlike a lot of what gets called history, Romanticism is not a war or a piece of technology or a political event. It refers to the birth of a new set of ideas. It's about a mindset and a new way of feeling. Romanticism began in Western Europe in the mid 18th century in the work of artists, poets, and philosophers, and it subsequently spread all over the world, changing millions of people and how they look at nature, the concept of children, love, sex, money, and work. We are all now, more or less, in some aspects of our sensibilities, romantics. Romanticism is best understood as a reaction to the birth of modern world and some of its key features like industrialization, urbanization, secularization, and consumerism. What follows are some of the central moments in the history of Romanticism. Now, the question is, why and how did Romanticism develop in England? In Britain, Romanticism was not a single unified movement revolving around any person, place, moment, or manifesto, and the various schools, styles, and stances we now label with capital R, romantic, would resist being lumped into one clear category. Yet all of Romanticism's products exploded out of the same set of contexts. Some were a century in the making, others were overnight upheavals, ushered in by revolutions in the United States in 1776 and France in 1789. The Romantic period coincides with the societal transformation of the Industrial Revolution, the rise of liberal movements, and the state's counter-revolutionary measures, and the voicing of radical ideas like parliamentary reform, expanded suffrage, abolitionism, atheism in pamphlets and public demonstration. Though Britain avoided an actual revolution, political tensions sporadically broke out into traumatizing violence, as in the Peterloo Massacre of 1819, in which state cavalry killed at least 10 peaceful demonstrators and wounded hundreds more. This revolutionary energy was at the core of Romanticism, which quite consciously set out to transform not only the theory and practice of poetry and also all art, but the very way we perceive the world. Some of its major precepts have survived into the 20th century and still affect our contemporary period. The first social cause that inspired the Romantics is the American Revolution. In Thomas Paine's book, Common Sense, he called for America to free itself from Britain. He argued that a government based on inheritance, that means in which the power is passed down from one generation to next generation, as it is in the case of English monarch or the House of Lords, was tyrannous. William Blake's reaction to 18th century revolutions in America signaled the beginning of new kind of English art, poetry, and philosophy. Between 1793 and 1795, Blake published a three-part story called Continental Prophecies, where he explored themes such as political repression and political revolt. The first part of the story was America, a prophecy. In America, a prophecy, Blake interprets the American Revolution as the harbinger of universal revolution. In Blake's interpretation of events, the main struggle is not Americans versus the British, but Orc, the fiery spirit of revolutionary energy fighting against Eurism, the wintry oppressor who uses reason and intellect to tyrannical purposes. America was depicted by revolutionary thinkers as the land of the free. That is why the poets like Coleridge and Robert Southey planned a scheme to immigrate to the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania near Priestley that they called Pantheosocracy. They imagined a community-style life based on principles of equality with the community equally sharing wealth and property. In the early 1780s, the situation in America led people to look again at the British Constitution and to ask for parliamentary reform. The next social event that I want to focus is the French Revolution. It is widely recognized as the most influential event that inspired Romantic movement. It brought a violent end to feudal powers and monarchy in France and asserted the rights and supremacy of the individual free will. With its principle of liberty, equality, and fraternity, the French Revolution played a huge impact on English Romantic literature. Wordsworth was much influenced by the ideals of French Revolution. The French captain Michel Bourbonnais strongly influenced Wordsworth in forming political ideals, and his presence was so important to the young poet that Wordsworth mentions the captain in ninth book of the Prelude. In the Prelude, Wordsworth describes how thrilled he was by the fall of Bastille in 1789. He wrote, "Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heaven." His theory and work as a poet were molded by the teachings of Rousseau, who shaped the French Revolution in its earliest stage. Rousseau was a naturalist who gave the slogan, "Return to nature." He expressed his faith in the elemental simplicities of life over the sophistications of civilization. It was under this powerful influence that Wordsworth came out with his epoch-making work in collaboration with his friend S.T. Coleridge, the Lyrical Ballads in 1798, which, in the words of Palgrave, was a trumpet that heralded the dawn of a new era. The Lyrical Ballads led a revolt against the artificial sentiment and equally artificial and mechanical poetic style of the 18th century. It upheld imagination over reason, emotions over logic, intuition over science, making way for the vast body of literature of great sensibility and passion. Wordsworth and Coleridge also translated the Revolution's emphasis on man's equality into the language of the common man and low subject matter found in Lyrical Ballads. But the violence of the Reign of Terror filled their mind with disgust, with disappointment. At this stage, Wordsworth found peace and comfort in the lap of nature, but he continued to believe in the dignity of man and wrote poems about the commonest objects and the lowest people. The Old Cumberland Beggar and the Leech Gatherer are finest examples of this essential humanity. On the other hand, Coleridge sought consolation in Middle Ages and abstract philosophy. His Ode to France and Ode to Dejection are confession of his disillusionment with French Revolution. While first generation romantics were repelled by the gory aspect of the revolution, second generation romantics such as Lord Byron and Percy Bysshe Shelley held the revolution's principle in a more idealistic way. The spirit of the revolution breathes vigorously in Shelley's poetry. All his important works such as The Revolt of Islam, Queen Mab, Swellfoot the Tyrant, Hellas, Prometheus Unbound, England in 1819, Ozymandias, and the incomparable Ode to the West Wind are full of revolutionary spirit. Common themes that Shelley incorporated into his works again and again include the hatred of kings, faith and the natural goodness of man, the beliefs in the future, the rights of natural impulses, the desire for a revolution, and liberty, equality, and fraternity. These are all clearly shaped by the French Revolution. While Shelley had faith that was founded upon modern ideas, Byron had faith in nothing. He stood for only destruction. Because of this, he was not a true revolutionist. Byron himself admitted that he resisted authority but offered no substitute. Byron believed neither in democracy nor in equality, but opposed all forms of tyranny and all attempts of rulers to control man. Apart from these two epoch-making revolutions, there were stirrings also in various religious movements of the late 17th and early 18th centuries, which also encouraged the Romantic movement. So apart from American and French Revolution, religious movement was also responsible for the Romantic movement. Religion became as cold in its formality as the literature of that time. In Germany, the reaction against dogmatism appeared in the form of pietism, which put emphasis on the inner spirit and emotions and not outward conformity. It considered reason as arrogant and misleading. It asserted the value and dignity of the individual human soul with emphasis on God's love for the individual. The Quakers, Baptists, Methodists in England protested against the age of reason. The Methodist movement rekindled once again a sense of religious ardor and enthusiasm in England. It brought feelings once more into repute. Methodist preachers proclaimed their message with fervent enthusiasms. Their hymns were full of emotions. They sounded a deep personal note by putting emphasis on God's interest in every human being. They stressed supreme value on the individual and its preciousness in the sight of God. These religious movements, with their emphasis on emotion, feeling and individual human being, paved the way for Romantic movement in literature and other arts. Apart from religion, the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution also had an influence on Romanticism. Due to these two historic social changes, we found the unprecedented depopulation of the countryside and the rapid development of the overcrowded industrial cities. The agricultural revolution, which involved enclosures that drove workers and their families off the land, and the industrial revolution provided them employment in the factories and mills operated by machines driven by steam power. Cities like London, Manchester were full of dirty factories that spit black smoke into the air day and night. The cities were overcrowded and filled with garbage. This changing landscape brought about by the industrial and agricultural revolutions once again brought back the respect for nature. The poor condition of workers, the new class conflicts, and the pollution of the environment led to a reaction against urbanism and industrialization, and a new emphasis on the beauty and value of nature in literature. So in this way, these two social movements also helped to bring Romanticism in England. I am concluding my discussion here. If you like this lesson, please hit the like button. If you still have any doubt or query, you can ask me in the comment section. I also request you to subscribe to my channel, where you will get a regular update of this kind of quality content. That's all for today. Thank you for watching.